In our Orthodox faith, we are blessed to have before us the example of the monastics, the monks. And we see them when we visit the monasteries or when they visit us, robed in black, with pious faces, with long beards and hair, or if they are women, with covered hair and head. We see them with their prayer ropes. We see them living a life that is set apart. But if anyone were to ask us, why? What is the point of the monk's life? Would we know what to say? More bluntly, if anyone were to ask us, what is the point of our Christian life? Would we know what to say? Because they're supposed to be the same answer. And that is hard, because the monk's life is so different, so other from our own. Some, indeed, look at that simple statement, that the life of the monk and the life of the lay person in the world are supposed to be the same. And they take from that the conclusion that all of us in the world are supposed to somehow live like monks. But this is not the lesson. In the epistle today, we hear St. Paul speak of a vision when he says he was caught up to the third heaven and he saw and heard things which it is not lawful for him to speak. And in the midst of this vision, he comes before the face of God himself. And then he says, there had been a thorn in my flesh that troubled me. We don't know what it is. A sickness that kept him from preaching and traveling as much as he would. A sin of the mind or the heart or action that troubled him, that he could not fight, that he could not triumph over to some degree. Whatever it was, it says, in this vision, caught up into heaven, before the face of God himself, he begged 3 times that God would take the temptation from him. And the Lord told him, my grace is enough for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. I don't think it was what St. Paul wanted to hear, but it is the truth that he heard, that the grace of God was sufficient even in his brokenness, even in his weakness, because God said his strength was made perfect in weakness. So hold on to that. Hold on to my strength is made perfect in weakness, and hold on to the question how the life of the monk and the life of the Christian in the world are supposed to be the same. And let us look at the third image given to us today. This parable that the Lord tells of Lazarus and the rich man. How Lazarus spent his days a beggar with no home to go to. Day and night he lay outside the gates of the home of a wealthy man, and he craved anything that would drop from the table. Sometimes he got it, and sometimes he did not and was left hungry. And the only comfort he got, if it was comfort, is that the wild dogs of the street would come and lick his sores. And inside the gate there is a wealthy man who feasts every day, who wears fine, sumptuous clothing, whose home is decorated in carved wood and gold and silver. And one day both men die. And the rich man finds himself in hell, tormented by the flames, in agony and alone. But he can see across a chasm, a great gap, that Lazarus is in paradise. Lazarus is in the embrace of Father Abraham. He is at peace and in comfort. And the rich man cries out for Lazarus to come and dip his finger in water and come wet his tongue. And Abraham says, he can't get to you. There's a chasm between us and you. Can't you see? And then the story goes on. But consider the image. The wealthy man who had no lack in his entire life finds himself in hell. The poor and broken Lazarus. It never tells us whether he was righteous or sinful. It only tells us he was in uttermost poverty. He finds himself in paradise. He is an example of perfect weakness. And therefore, when his life came to an end, there was nothing that his heart and mind clung to, nothing that he could not let go of as he entered into the heavenly kingdom. He came before the throne of God and rejoiced to see his Creator. He had had nothing in life. And so for him, death was an entrance into glory, into the heavenly kingdom, into comfort and peace and joy and love and life. While the rich man, it never says he was wicked. It never says he was evil. It says he feasted. It doesn't say they were wild parties. It doesn't say he cheated anyone. It just says he was wealthy. And what we must understand is that for the wealthy man, coming before the very same throne of God on the day of his death, he has so much more that his heart has learned to crave. He stands before his Creator and he wants fondue. He remembers his fine home, his servants, his clothes, and these things which filled his mind and heart and time in life do not stop filling his mind and heart and time after he dies. And therefore, although he is close enough that his voice can reach paradise, think about that. If the walls were not there, and I raised my voice very loudly, I could maybe be heard at the gates of the park. We are not talking about two distant places. Both the rich man and the poor man, the saved and the damned, find themselves in the same place. A little distance between them. What is different is not where they went. It is their heart, their mind, their life. One is weak and has made room in his life for God, who fills him with joy and peace and love. And the other has filled his life with everything else and left no room for the Lord. And therefore for him, after death he finds agony, torment, loss, because he has lost everything that he threw himself into. But the man who was poor finds himself made rich because his hand is empty, his heart is open, his life has room for the glory of God. So, in the poor man Lazarus, we see one who God made perfect despite his weakness. His strength is shown forth. His glory is made manifest in this poor, ragged, worthless beggar. In his weakness, he becomes a vessel for the Lord's glory. And the man who was strong, who was wealthy, who was full of everything good in this life, finds himself broken and weak and empty. So if we return to the question of what is the life of a monk for, a monastic life is founded on renunciation, on abandonment of possessions. This is why the monk makes 3 vows. A vow of poverty, to not possess anything. A vow of obedience, to submit his will to the will of the superior, the abbot, whoever is over him. And a vow of chastity, which is to say, not only does he not seek to possess things, nor does he seek to possess another person. The monastic is committed to weakness. And so too must we be. The means are different. I am not saying we are called to give up all of the things that we have. Not our clothes, not our possessions, not our cars, not our houses, not our families. We live in the world. But we must take the warning that is given by the rich man. These things are blessings that God has given to us. We must not be possessed by them. We have been given great strength. But our task, as well as the monastic's task, is to learn to be weak, to learn to be broken, to learn our poverty, and to turn our hearts to the Lord and seek His salvation, His glory, His strength, and not our own. Those of you who are older, and perhaps those of you who are younger as well, you know that God has blessed us with a life that is full of trials and tribulations and loss. Even if in our childhood, when we were 6 or 7, we felt like we had no lack. By the time we are 16, we have surely lost something. By the time we are 26, we still, if God is gracious, have our health, our strength, but we are beginning to see that we are at the peak of a mountain from which there is a decline. 36, we understand. Maybe we plateaued, but things begin to go downhill. 46, 56, 66, we begin to go to funerals. The first peer, sometime, God willing, between 26 and 46, dies too young. And we understand that that strength we felt when we were 6 will not last forever. By the time we reach 56, 66, 76, we barely go to weddings and baptisms anymore. It's all funerals. And we know that one day it will be our own. This life that the Lord has given us teaches us weakness. And the Lord is with us, sustaining us in His strength, if we will but allow Him to be there. If we will not fight it. And yet it is our nature to fight it. So I beg of you today, cast your minds back to the monastics and understand. When we look to the monks, they are not merely a spiritual retreat where we can go when we are tired of the world, although they are that. They are a persistent, unrelenting call for us to reflect on how we may learn to be weak and to receive the strength of the Lord in place of all the things that this world gives to fill us. Take heed to the epistle, take heed to the gospel, and let us stand together in weakness and approach Christ, who offers himself to us to fill all our needs. Please stand.